The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock, its gold-embossed lettering catching the light. The Thompson family cordially invites you to celebrate Richard's promotion to senior partner at Willowbrook Country Club. Beneath the formality, a penciled note had been scrawled. Dress code strictly enforced, no cheap clothing. I sat in my home office, invitation in hand, surrounded by acquisition reports and stacks of property deeds. Willowbrook Country Club. I knew the place intimately. 18 months earlier, I had purchased it after the previous owners defaulted during the downturn. At $23 million, the acquisition had been routine for me, a distressed property with solid foundations and a prime location. What my family never realized was that their supposedly struggling relative had quietly assembled a hospitality empire worth $89 million over the last 8 years. While they pitied me as the family disappointment stuck in a dead-end office job, I had been deliberately acquiring undervalued properties, revitalizing them, and reinvesting the profits. Willowbrook, in particular, had been a deeply satisfying conquest. Uncle Richard had been a proud member for 15 years, flaunting his access as proof of his superiority over the rest of us. He never missed a chance to remark that some people could never afford such luxury. Now, he was about to host his grand celebration there, blissfully unaware that his scorned niece owned every golf cart, every crystal chandelier, and every blade of manicured grass beneath his feet. On Saturday afternoon, I drove to Willowbrook in my modest Honda Civic, dressed in a simple navy Target dress, exactly the kind of choice that would confirm their assumptions about me. The valet took my keys without comment as luxury cars gleamed along the circular drive. The celebration was set in the Magnolia Room, a refined space overlooking the 18th green. Around 40 relatives had gathered, buzzing with conversations about success, status, and the rewards of hard work. Sarah, Aunt Patricia spotted me instantly. "You made it. We weren't sure you could take the time off work." "I managed," I said, accepting a glass of water from a passing server. "How nice. Richard will be so pleased you're here to see what real success looks like." I nodded, slipping into a seat at the back table, the one clearly reserved for the lesser members of the family. My cousins Jennifer and Michael were already there, joined by my brother David, the high school teacher. "Look at this place," Jennifer whispered. "Uncle Richard really made it, didn't he?" "The membership fees are insane," Michael added. "Like 50 grand just to join, plus monthly dues." I glanced around, taking in the details I had personally approved during renovations. The crown molding, the chandeliers, the hand-painted wallpaper. Every touch was mine. At the front of the room, Uncle Richard commanded attention. At 62, he still cut a striking figure. Tailored suit, silver hair, and the effortless arrogance of a man who had never doubted his status. He tapped his champagne glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight in this magnificent setting. We're here not only to celebrate my promotion, but also the Thompson family's continued success." Applause echoed. He went on, his voice swelling with pride. "Some of you may not fully appreciate what it takes to belong to a place like Willowbrook. The standards are high, financially and socially. But that's what separates us from ordinary people. We set goals, we work hard, and we achieve the kind of success that grants access to places like this." I sipped my water while relatives at the front tables nodded in agreement. Finance executives, real estate moguls, corporate lawyers. The family's winners. Richard's eyes flicked to our table. Of course, not every family member is quite there yet, and that's all right. Some are still finding their way. His voice dripped with condescension. But perhaps tonight can inspire them. Jennifer shifted in her seat. David stared at his hands. The insult hung in the air. "Take my niece Sarah," Richard continued, and my stomach tightened. "She's been stuck in the same entry-level job for years, living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car. But here she is tonight, surrounded by what true success looks like. Maybe this will encourage her to aim higher." The room turned toward me. Some faces showed pity, others smug satisfaction. I kept my expression calm. Richard warmed to his speech. "The truth is, some people are destined to achieve great things, while others provide contrast. Sarah will never own anything like a Willowbrook membership. Unlike those of us who worked hard, She'll always be on the outside looking in. More nods of agreement. The message was clear. Know your place. I raised my glass and drank in silence. Throughout dinner, relatives offered comforting words wrapped in pity. Don't feel bad about your situation, Sarah, Cousin Jennifer's mother told me. Not everyone can be wealthy. Have you considered going back to school? Uncle Robert suggested. You could still improve your prospects. The important thing is that you're here to support the family's achievements, Aunt Margaret chimed in. I thanked them politely, savoring the chocolate mousse I had personally selected for the menu. Later, Richard approached our table with his trademark swagger. Sarah, thank you for coming tonight. I hope this has been educational for you. It certainly has, I said truthfully. Good. You know, there's value in knowing your place. Not everyone can be a success, but everyone can admire it when they see it. Look around you. This is what achievement looks like. Willowbrook represents the pinnacle of status in this city. Of course, someone in your position could never hope to qualify for membership. I imagine not, I replied evenly. Exactly. You'll never own anything like this. But you can appreciate it through family members who've earned access. He patted my shoulder, mistaking the gesture for kindness. Keep working hard. Maybe one day you'll afford a dinner at a place like this. That would be something, I murmured. As the evening wound down, I lingered in the marble lobby, watching my family's laughter echo under crystal light. Richard held court by the fireplace, promising quarterly gatherings for the successful branch of the Thompsons, a tradition for the next generation. I walked to my Civic as the valet pulled it up, feeling their eyes from the windows. Let them laugh. They had no idea they'd spent the night celebrating inside my empire. I was in my office by 7 a.m., going over financial statements from my various properties. Willowbrook Country Club's figures looked especially good. Membership was full, the restaurant was profitable, and the golf course was booked solid for the summer. At 10:30 a.m., I phoned the club's general manager, Patricia Wells. Good morning, Patricia. I need you to take care of something for me. Of course, Ms. Chin. What do you need? She asked. There's a member, Richard Thompson. Membership number 4782. Terminate his membership immediately. Do you want me to document a reason? She queried. Owner's discretion, I replied. No explanation necessary. I'll handle it personally. Should I call him directly? She asked. Yes. Tell him his membership is revoked effective immediately, and that he's no longer welcome on the property. Understood. What about his upcoming reservations? She reminded me. He had the Magnolia Room reserved for next month. Cancel everything, I said. And Patricia, make it clear this is final and non-negotiable. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Uncle Richard's number. His voice was strained, panicked. Sarah, you'll never believe this. Willowbrook Country Club just revoked my membership. That's awful, Uncle Richard. Did they give you a reason? I asked. The manager said it was the owner's orders and refused to explain further. 15 years of membership and they tossed me out with no explanation. How peculiar. Did you ask to speak to someone in charge? I said. I demanded to speak with the owner, but they told me the owner doesn't take calls from former members. Former members? Can you believe that? He fumed. That does seem harsh, I replied. And then he said something that made the irony sting. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I hope you won't mind. You don't happen to know anyone connected to the club, do you? Anyone who could help me understand what happened? The irony was exquisite. The same man who'd spent the previous evening explaining why I could never afford nice things was now begging me for help with his country club problem. I paused, then said thoughtfully, I might know someone who could provide information. But instead I called Patricia back. Please have the club's legal counsel send Mr. Thompson a formal letter stating his membership was terminated due to conduct unbecoming a member, I instructed. What conduct should we cite? She asked. Public disparagement of other members based on perceived financial status. We have zero tolerance for that. Understood. The letter will go out today. 3 hours later, Uncle Richard rang again. Sarah, I got a letter from the club's lawyers. They claim I violated some conduct policy by making disparaging comments about other members, but I don't understand. I never said anything inappropriate. What kind of comments are they referring to? Something about discrimination based on financial status, I said. But Sarah, I was just talking about success and achievement. You were there. You heard everything I said. There was nothing wrong with it. You don't think so? I asked. When I mentioned you during my speech, that wasn't inappropriate, was it? I only used you as an example of different life paths. An example of what, exactly? I pressed. You know, how some people struggle while others succeed. I wasn't being mean. You said I would never own anything nice, I reminded him. But that's just realistic. I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. I was pointing out obvious differences in our situations. And what situations are those? I demanded. Sir, come on. You work an entry-level job, live in a small apartment, drive an old car. I'm a senior partner at a major law firm with a country club membership. Those are just facts, are they? I repeated. Of course they are, he insisted. Look, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but I was just being honest about our different circumstances. Tell me, Uncle Richard, what exactly do you think my job is? I asked. You work in some office doing filing or administrative work, I don't know, he guessed. And you've thought that for how long? I asked. Well, always, I guess. You never talk about work, you don't live extravagantly, you drive that old car. So he was making assumptions based on appearances. Reasonable assumptions, sir, he said. So will you help me with the club situation or not? He pleaded. Actually, I can help you understand exactly what happened, I said. Thank you. I knew I could count on family, he said. Uncle Richard, do you know who owns Willowbrook Country Club? I asked. Some investment group, I think, he answered. Why? The investment group is called Pacific Holdings LLC. Okay, he replied. I own Pacific Holdings LLC. There was a long silence. Excuse me? He stammered. I own the country club, Uncle Richard. I have for 18 months. That's not possible. I bought it for $23 million when the previous owners defaulted on their loans, I explained. 23 million? He said incredulously. Sarah, you can't be serious. I am serious. Your membership was terminated because the owner, me, doesn't tolerate members who publicly disparage others based on perceived financial status, I said. He sputtered. But you work an office job. I own a consulting firm that specializes in distressed asset acquisition. My portfolio is worth approximately $89 million. $89 million? He repeated. Yes. The entry-level job you imagined is actually me running a multi-million-dollar business. That small apartment is a downtown penthouse I own outright, and the old car is a personal choice. I prefer to live below my means. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Sarah, are you telling me you're rich? He asked. I'm telling you your assumptions about my life were completely wrong, I said. But why didn't you tell us? He demanded. Because I wanted to see how you treated me without knowing about my money, I replied. Last night, you used me as an example of failure in front of 40 family members at a club I own. If I had known what you would have done, you would have been treated differently. And that's the problem. Uncle Richard, Sarah, please, he began. You have to understand. I understand perfectly, I said. Your respect is conditional on wealth. Your family love is tied to social status, and your treatment of people hinges on what you think they can do for you. That's not true, is it? He protested. When you thought I was poor, you used me as a cautionary tale. Now that you know I'm wealthy, you're desperately trying to apologize and worm your way back in. I was wrong. I made a mistake, he stammered. You made a choice, I replied. You chose to publicly humiliate someone you believed couldn't defend themselves. What do you want me to do? I want you to understand that actions have consequences, I said. So you're keeping me banned from the club? He begged. The membership termination stands, sir, I responded. Please, that club means everything to me. My professional reputation, my social standing. They're all based on memberships and appearances rather than character. I noticed, I said. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone I was wrong about you. Uncle Richard, Do you honestly think this is about wanting an apology? I asked. Then what is it about? He demanded. It's about showing you what it feels like to be excluded, dismissed, and humiliated because of someone else's assumptions about your worth, I said. I get it now. I understand. Please, just give me another chance. The decision is final, I told him, and I hung up. Almost immediately, 6 other family members called after they'd heard about Uncle Richard's situation. Each conversation followed the same predictable pattern: stunned surprise at my wealth, frantic attempts to walk back previous remarks, and hurried efforts to portray themselves as longtime supporters. The most revealing call came from Aunt Patricia, who, only 24 hours earlier, had greeted me with condescending pity. Sarah's sweetie, Richard, told, they announced the most astonishing news to me. We had absolutely no clue about your achievement, did we? Naturally not. You're so humble. Now that we know, we're bursting with pride. Are you proud of me, or proud of my bank balance? Sarah, that's unfair. We have always loved you, haven't we? Because last night you told me not to feel ashamed about my circumstances and suggested I contribute in other ways since I couldn't be rich. I was simply trying to be encouraging. You were trying to manage what you viewed as the family's embarrassment. That's not true. And Patricia, let me ask you something. If you discovered tomorrow that I'd lost everything, how would you treat me? With the same affection and respect? Would you still invite me to dinners at extravagant places? Well, it would depend on whether I could afford it. Exactly. Sir, you're being unjust. Family ties are complex and they don't have to be. But you've made yours contingent on money and standing. Within a week, the truth about my finances had circulated through the entire extended family. Their reactions were quick and predictable. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect, eager to spend time with me and hear about my business accomplishments. Invitations arrived in droves. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years began scheduling lunches, dinners, and coffee. The same people who had spent decades casting me as a cautionary tale of failure were now keen to bask in the reflected glory. We always knew Sarah would hit it big, became the new family story. Yet the most persistent outreach came from Uncle Richard. He phoned every day, sent letters, and appeared twice in my office building lobby before security escorted him away. His messages followed a familiar arc: fury at being deceived, pleas to be restored to the club, despair over his social status, and eventual acceptance that he had learned a lesson. The last confrontation occurred 3 weeks after the country club episode. I was leaving my office building when Uncle Richard stepped up beside my car. Sarah, please, in 5 minutes, he begged. Uncle Richard, I asked you not to contact me, I replied. You must understand something. I've lost everything. My social standing, my professional reputation, my sense of self-worth. Do you realize what you've done to me? I did exactly what you've been doing to me for years, he insisted. That's different. How? I demanded. Because I was successful. I earned my place. You assumed I hadn't. But you hid it from us. I lived quietly and let you draw your own conclusions. Your assumptions revealed your character. Sarah, I'm begging you, reinstate my membership. I'll do anything. Uncle Richard, I said, do you know what has hurt me most? Realizing that 40 years of family relationships were entirely based on how you perceived my social standing. That can't be true, can it? He asked. When you thought I was poor, you used me as an example of failure. Once you discovered I was wealthy, you suddenly tried to be my best friend. What does that say about genuine family love? I confess I made a mistake. You revealed your true priorities, and those priorities do not match the kind of family ties I want. So what now? Are you cutting me out forever? He asked. I'm not cutting you off, I answered. I'm treating you as you treated me, based on my assessment of your character and values. And your assessment is? That you judge people entirely by money and consider relatives either assets or embarrassments according to perceived success. I can change. Can you? He pleaded. Or would you merely adjust your behavior toward me while treating others the same? He had no answer. Uncle Richard, I told him, the country club membership wasn't the punishment. The punishment is the realization that your family relationships are as conditional and superficial as mine turned out to be. That's cruel. It's honest, and honesty is something our family has been avoiding for a long time. 6 months later, I hosted a modest family gathering in my penthouse. The guest list was carefully chosen. Only relatives who had reached out with sincere apologies and shown steady, respectful behavior over time. David, my brother the teacher, attended. He had been kind to me both before and after my wealth was revealed. Jennifer had sent a thoughtful letter acknowledging her assumptions and asking how to rebuild our bond. A few cousins had proven their character through consistent deeds rather than talk. Uncle Richard was not invited. The evening was small, intimate, and authentic. We shared our lives, dreams, and struggles, not bank statements or social rank. For the first time in decades, I felt like part of an actual family, rather than a financial pecking order. The most meaningful moment came when Jennifer pulled me aside. "Sarah, may I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Are you happier now after everything?" I considered carefully, and then said yes, because now I truly know who my real family is. "And who is that?" she asked. "The people here tonight. Those who love me regardless of my bank account." "What about the others?" "They're family by blood but not by choice. I've learned that chosen family is the only kind that really matters." Today, 2 years after the country club incident, I maintain relationships with those relatives who have proven their integrity over time. The rest, including Uncle Richard, remain peripheral. They occasionally attempt reconciliation, but they haven't shown the fundamental change in values needed for honest relationships. Uncle Richard ultimately joined another country club. Although it lacks the prestige he once associated with Willowbrook, he still makes remarks about success and achievement at family events. But he's more cautious now about whom he targets. Sometimes I wonder whether it would have been different if I'd revealed my wealth gradually, or tried to teach my family about their assumptions instead of letting things play out so dramatically. Then I recall Uncle Richard's words, "You'll never own anything nice like this." Unlike some successful family members, I realized he was right in one sense. What he had was conditional respect, shallow relationships, and a social position founded on exclusion and judgment. What I possess now is unconditional love from people who chose to know me as a person, not as a balance sheet. That, I decided, is worth far more than any country club membership.